This is Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Samach Hey, and we pick it up on the bottom of Samach Dalet Amid Beis as we daven and hope for all of Achinu Kol Beis Yisrael, and the Schus HaTorah should be megan in the most ultimate of ways. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, we are 3 lines from the bottom on Samach Dalet Amid Beis, continuing the discussion. The Machlekes Rav Meir and Rav Yesi in our Mishnah, in which one is Mekadesh, one of his daughters from 2 groups, the Gedela or the Ketana, and we don't know which one it is. Says Abaye Machlekes, the Machlekes in Rav Yesi and Rav Meir is B'shtei Kitei Banais. Aval Bekat Achas Divrei HaKol Gedela Mamish, Ketana Mamish, Emsois B'shma Karila. Says Abaye, the Machlekes in the Mishnah is precise when there's 2 groups. But explains Abaye, if there wouldn't be 2 groups, but rather it would all be 1 group, then oldest is oldest, youngest is youngest, and if he meant the one in the middle, Bishma Karila, he would call her by name and he would not say oldest or youngest. Abaye, Rav Masla is not happy, and he asks, Elamayata, if what you're saying Abaye is true, as we turn over to Samachay Amar Aleph, Emsayis, Shebekat Shniya Tishtari. The middle daughter in the second group should be mutter. Why should she be mutter? Because seemingly based on what you just said about it, the middle daughter is always called by name. But we see in the Mishnah that's not true. Answers the Gemara, Hachav Mayaskina, and you know what we're dealing with over here is B'she'ein Sham Ella Gedayla Uketana. Mistavra, says the Gemara, because if there was a middle daughter, we should have said it. Says the Gemara, wait, what's your ayah? I'm sorry, Devada is fake, that one's for sure, Misobek, Vasirle, Mikatani, he doesn't say it explicitly. Says the Gemara again, and the kasha is on the raya. Mistavra. It's not a kasha on the teretz. Says the Gemara, Hachiashta. 1 second. Hasam Tana Kitana, says the Gemara. Hasam, in the first group of daughters, Tana Katana Didali Isura. He mentions the youngest daughter, showing she is Aser. Vuhu Adin, Lachlik Shishimina, anyone older than her. Hacha, but in the second group, it should have listed it. Therefore, the Raya stands the test of time. Amarli Ravuna Bredi Yeshua Rava. Ravuna Bredi Yeshua asks another kasha on Abaye to Rava. Ha Pesach Tchikadach as Dami Upligi. But the case of Pesach, which is the end of the Mishnah, which is similar to 1 group, when he said until the beginning of Pesach, and yet we see in the Mishnah they argue in that case. So seemingly Abaye, who said that they only argue in the case of 2 groups, is contradicted from the Mishnah itself. Explains the Gemara, Amar Lei, Hasab Lishna to Alma Kamifli. So it comes out something fascinating, that even though in the Mishnah sounds like there's 1 machlekes, explains the Gemara, no. The second half of the Mishnah, which they're arguing in the case of Apanei Pesach, that's a machlekes in word. That is an etymology machlekes. In the words, Lisha Alma. Masa, Marsavar Apanei Pesach ad Kami Pesach, until before Marsavar ad Mafni Pesach, until Pesach ends, but it will not be a kasha on Abaye. We continue with a Mishnah. We're 5 lines into the wide lines on Samachay Amar Aleph. Ha'omer Elisha's home says to woman Kedesh Ticha, V'amer is like Kedesh Tani, you never married me. What's the halacha? So here we learn out the fascinating halacha that one's words are always believed and always have a credibility with regard to halacha is for himself. Says the Mishnah, who also he says he's married to her. So he is forbidden in her relatives. But the he and she is mutaris b'kreivav. Because she said she never got married. And therefore she is mutter in his relatives. In the flip side, he marries Kidashani, she says you married me, and he says Loi Kidash Tich, I never married you. Again, next case, Kidash Ticha v'aymeres Loi Kidashi elobiti. So now she's agreeing there was some level of Kiddushin, wasn't hers to her daughter. So again, who also b'kreivais Gedayla, u'Gedayla mutares b'kreivav, cause the daughter, there's no credibility for her, for the daughter. Hu mutar b'krevas ketana, uktana mutar is b'krevav. Kedashti as a bitcha. If he says, I married your daughter, v'hi oimeres, and she responds, lo kidashti ela oisi. No, you married me. So then, who asar b'krevas ketana, uketana mutar is b'krevav. But who mutar b'krevas kedayla, kedayla asura b'krevav. Says the Gemara, let's, in classical Gemara form, let's dissect the Mishnah case by case. Says the Gemara, why did the Mishnah have to list both cases, case A and B, the first two cases in the Mishnah, seemingly they were the same thing on the flip side. Because a man, it makes no difference, a man can marry two women. So maybe the fact that he said it, Umikri Amar, and he's just making it up. It's happenstance. He's not being precise. Aval ihi, but she, Ema Yilav de Kimle B'diburav, she wasn't precise. Lo Yavis Amr V'Lisser Iya B'Krevaisa. And therefore, she should not only be usher to him, she should also be usher to his, V'Litaser Ihu B'Krevaisa. If she says that she married him, the Havamina is that she has more credibility. Because when she says that, there's huge ramifications. She can't get married anymore. So maybe there should be an Namanis even for him. He should be Aser. Kamash Malan. Then no, she's only Naman regarding herself, but not regarding him. The next case, Kidashticha. If he says, I married you, she says, no, you married my daughter, says Gemara Sulamli, why do you need this case? Itzrach. Maybe. Midaraisa, there's a credibility to the father. Midarabanan. Maybe Dindarabanan, there's a credibility that a woman has with regard to her daughter, and therefore, V'titzar Brata B'dibura. And therefore, maybe the daughter should become usher based on that which the mother said. Kamashlan, that there is no namanis. Kedashti as bitich. The next case of the Mishnah. The guy says, I married your daughter, and she says, no, you married me. Hasul lamali. I did it taninamiya. Once we said the previous case, the third case, you also said the fourth case, even though there's not really any chiddush in this case. Itmar, so after we figured out all the cases in the Mishnah, says the Gemara, Itmar. Rav Oimar Kaifin Shmuel Amar Mivakshin. Rav says we force him to give her a get, and Shmuel says we ask him to give a get. So what is this case that Rav and Shmuel are disagreeing whether the man has to give a get? Says the Gemara, hi. On which case are we talking about? Ilema Reisha. If we're talking about on the Reisha, Lav Kaifinika, V'lei Mivakshinika. There's no kaifin, there's no mavakshin, there's nothing going on in the Reisha. Why is there nothing going on in the Reisha? Because we just said in the Reisha that the woman is completely mutter. So what does she need a get for? Ella Seifa. We must be going on the second case where the woman says that she married him and he says, I did nothing. So Bishlam Mavakshin L'chaye. I understand that we could request of him to give her the get. That's a very nice thing to do. Elakaifin, amai. What is the reason why we would force him to give a get if he doesn't want to? Amai, amar loy nichali did sir. He can say, I don't want to become usher to her relatives. At the current moment, he is our bikriva. He is completely mutter. So this woman, he says, I have nothing to do with. But he could go marry your sister. But if he goes and he gives her a get, then he becomes usher to his sister. So how do we force him to give a get? Ella shemaitza hadadi itmar. Says the Gemara, you know what's going on in Rav and Shmuel? Rav and Shmuel are not arguing. Rather, they're adding on to each other. Amar Shmuel mivakshim and olitain get. Shmuel said that when she says she's married, so we ask him, do the right thing or give him a get. And Amar Rav says, if nothing get me'atzmai, then koifin is alitik ksuba. Totally different din. Rav's not commenting on the get at all, rather Rav is commenting on the next aspect. That if he gives a get, then we're koifin for him to give her ksuba. It's marnami. We see this explicit. Amar Rav Acha bar Ada, Amar Rav Acha bar Ada, Amar Rav Amnuna, Amar Rav Kaifin umavakshin. What does that mean? Tarti hachamar mavakshin and alitain get. V'nasan me'atzma then kaifin is alitain ksuba, corroborating the way that we just learned. Amar Rav Yehuda says Rav Yehuda Anudin. So that was the machlekes Rav and Shmuel. Comes out that they're not arguing at all about giving a get, about forcing to give a get. Rather, Rav is adding on to the din of Shmuel that according to Shmuel, once he gives a get, says Rav, we would force him to give the ksuba. Amar Rav Yehuda mekadosh be'ed echad ein chayshin likedushin. If someone marries a woman in front of one aid, we're not worried about the Kiddushin. There's no Kiddushin at all, and she can go and marry whoever she wants. But what happens? There's an Eid Echad that says they got married, and then he and she l'maisa agree that was a Kiddushin. What is the halacha? Says the Gemara that was asked Rav Yehuda, and he responded in yes, v'lo no, v'Rav Yadei, and he didn't have an answer. It's Mars. The Gemara concludes, Amar Nachman Risholam Mekadosh Be'ed Echad Ein Chayshin the Kiddushin Vafilu Shnei Amaydim. We're still not Chayshin for the Kiddushin. So even though they're both admitting there was a marriage, and there's an Eid Echad saying there was a marriage, says the Gemara Lamaisa we're not Chayshin for such a Kiddushin. Eisei Rav Rav Nachman. I'm really Shekadash Dicha V'Yemer Shekadash Tani Hu Avzer B'Kar V'Yisavim V'Taras B'Kar Vav. If the case of the Mishnah that there are Eidim, Mutaras B'Krav, why would he be mutter? Why would she be mutter in his relatives? So the Gemara now says, what is the underpinning of the Mishnah? Elalav, it's this case, Be'id Echad, and yet we see that he's aser and she's aser. Goes by their words. Says the Gemara, Hacha Mayaskina, no. Going to Amar Allah Kitashticha B'Fnei Pliny, Upliny. They're not here, therefore there is no question. Ask the Gemara again on Rav Nachman Esvei. We're not worried they actually were together. No, we are worried because they used to be married. We're afraid that they were together at night. Says if there are Eidim that they were together, then of course they need a new get. And says the Gemara, based on what you are saying, Ima Seifa, Umaydim in his Garsha b'nei Irisin, Sheisrich Amena Get Shenim, and they Shein Liva Gaspa. If this is a din of Eid Echad, who cares about Iris and Nesuin? So it's a totally different machlokes. Beishamai Savri. A totally different sugya at all. As we turn over to Samachem and Al, Beishamai says, we do not say that once we have Eidim attesting that they were Nisyache, that they were secluded, we could assume that there was intercourse. But Umaydim, Vaday ben Iskarshim Neirisin, just because they're together, we don't have to assume that they had relations because they were not familiar with each other. So the Gemara defends Rav Nachman, and the Gemara as well defends Shmuel, that Kiddushin in front of Eid Echad is going to be nothing. Afilu shtei amaydim. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel, 5 lines down, Samachei Amar Aleph, says Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marsa Mishmei Derav, Hamakadish Be'ed Echad. The Gemara now proves the din that we just started off with Shmuel and Amar Aleph. That what? Hamakadish Be'ed Echad Eichosh L'Kedushin V'afilu Shtei Amaydim. Amar Avuna Hamakadish Be'ed Echad Beidina Rabba Amri Eichosh L'Kedushin. My Beidina Rabba, who is that? Rav. V'igadiami Amar Rabba. Amar Rabba Avuna Amar Rabba Hamakadish Be'ed Echad Beidina Rabba Amri Eichosh L'Kedushin. My Beidina Rabba Rebbe. So we have numerous opinions proving that Mekadosh Be'ed Echad, we are not chayshin for the Kiddushin. Masiv Rav Achdubai Barami, says the Gemara, asks Rav Achdubai Barami, Shnayim Shabbat Medina Sayam Isha Iman, there are 2 people that come with a woman. V'chavila Imam, and there's a package amongst them. This one says, Ishti, this is my wife's avdi, this is one's my avdi, chavilas is my package. She's avdi, chavilasi, v'ishta imeres. Elu shnei avdi, they're both my avdi, v'chavilu shali. So what is the halacha in this case? It sounds like a bad joke. Three people walk into a room. Says the Gemara, Sricha shnei gitin, v'kayvik subasa mina chavila. She needs 2 gitin from the 2 men, and she gets a ksuba from whatever is inside the package. Says Rav Achdubai Barami, Echidami, what's the case? If each of the men have edim, then Mimatzi Amra, Elu Shnei Avdi, V'chavila Shali, would she be able to say they are my avadim and the package is mine? It must be that what is the case, says Rav Achdubai Barami, it's with Eid Echad. And then what would come out? From the fact that this woman needs a get from each man, it sounds like that we are chayshishin for Kiddushin Eid Echad, contradicting all the Amoraim that we just quoted. That said we're not chayshish. Says Gemara v'tizbra Eid Echad b'achasha mi mehamin. This is the case of Eid Echad b'achasha. That is an Eid Echad that's being contradicted, but that's never has an amanis. Ella, says the Gemara, l'mishay la'alma d'kuli amloi pligi d'shari. To say that this woman is mutter to the world, everyone agrees is mutter. That this whole case was a ksuba stick in. When is she able to collect the ksuba from the package? And on that we're saying it's only if she gets in from both men. And this is with Ramiri Damar Metaltim Mishtab the ksuba that the metaltlin is mishubed to the ksuba. And we conclude with the Gemara asking, okay, so lemaskana, my have Allah. What is the story with Kiddushin al pi Eid Echad? Says the Gemara, Rav Kahana Amar ein chayshin the Kiddushin, or Abba Amar chayshin the Kiddushin. Amar Rav Ashi the Rav Kahana. You Rav Kahana, you just said you're not worried that Kiddushin might die toch the office davar mimamain, that you learn out from Mammon. That just like there's no nemanis of Echad by Mammon, there's not going to be no nemanis of Echad by Kiddushin. Imar la'al no das ba'aldin kamei dimdani. But if you're going to learn out from monetary din, then there's a rule over there that when one person admits, like me'edim, avkan adas ba'aldin kameidim dami. Amar le'hasam lo kachayev la'achrina, kachayev la'achrina. A very basic rule. The only time that we say that adas ba'aldin is kameidim dami is only when it doesn't detrimentally affect someone else. But if the adas ba'aldin is coming at the expense of someone else, then we never say Haidas Baldin will be Kameidim Dami. We'll stop over here and we'll pick it up from Marzutcha, Psiyata Dishmaya, in the next Shir.